I was trying to make this thing work as like a sonata. I just couldn't figure it out. I was trying to figure out like what did I want to do as a thing with it, because a lot of my music is very programmatic. I usually have a very programmatic sense of what I want with it. I'm either trying to depict a particular story or scene, and this piece I kind of wanted to step away from that a little bit and just like let it be something, because like we'd already been assailed with just current events being like these things that are just right in our face all the time. Like we have programmatic stuff happening to us all the time. We don't need more of it. We need something that's a little bit more free for us to manipulate and interpret the way that we want.
Do you feel like the sort of conducting side uh, has informed your compositional process at all?
Oh, absolutely. I always talk about that I have three pillars for myself as a person, as a musician. I have composition, I have conducting, and I have education, because those are the main three things that have constantly come up through my training and my schooling, but also what I've done in my career, and each one informs the other. So I know there's sometimes some composer conductors talk about like when they're composing, they feel like a conductor trying to compose, and then when they're a conductor, they're a composer trying to conduct. I don't feel that necessarily, but I do approach it that way whenever I'm running a rehearsal. When I stop to work on a section with students, I'll be like, hey, here's possibly the intent of what the composer is doing here, breaking it down from that angle, giving them that extra layer of understanding so that they can have a little bit more buy-in, other than just like, okay, it's a 5 going to a 1. What do I do with that? So, and vice versa also works the same way when I'm composing. There is a small practical element when I'm writing about thinking like, okay, what is technically possible? How far can I push that? But also, how are they going to rehearse this? What are they going to do?
What is your inspiration? Some of the composers that you really look up to, or maybe ones that you can trace a lineage with this piece and speak to that a bit.
Okay. Um, so my first go-to answer for this is always Debussy, because that's the first thing that I can remember really being influenced as a composer is the music of Debussy, because I'm also a pianist, and I was playing some of his piano preludes at one point in undergrad, and they ended up turning into like orchestration projects that turned into the first thing I was ever performed as. So like Debussy has a huge influence on me, just the way he addresses color. I don't necessarily think of him as terribly technical. I mean, he obviously is in a lot of ways, but like I see him for the colors and just the texture, and I work a lot with that too, like especially like paying attention to range and tessitura. So like he's a huge influence on me that way. Another influence from me would be Bartok, from rhythm, from that perspective, because I don't think of myself necessarily as an overly rhythmic composer, but that tends to be one of the things that like everyone who plays my work is like, oh yeah, you're very rhythmic. I'm like, okay. I don't necessarily think I am, but I can see where they're getting that from. And I would attribute that to like the time I spent with Bartok, like playing like his first piano concerto again back when I was an undergrad. Like it had a big impact on me. It was like the first time I had ever experienced anything like that. Before that, I had just played like Clementi and Beethoven sonata. So like moving into Bartok was like a whole new world. It's like, oh, you can move and shift things around, and oh, look what you can do with these crazy meters. And I've mostly gotten out of my early crazy meter phase that every composer goes through, but like I still use
Right.
those ideas of like, oh, everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to do a 7/8 to a 5/8 to a 3/8 to a 4/16 or whatever. Like we all have that moment. We all just need
Right.
to admit
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But like
I've
rhythmic.
played many of those moments for a
Oh
couple of
yes.
years ago.
So those two are like the kind of the bigger ones. Another one that's more recent though would be like Jacob Collier. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a British musician. He does a lot of stuff. Like he's a mutant with his voice and his theory. It's great. It's amazing. He's very complex. He's somehow able to take something that's incredibly complex and make it sound as organic as possible. The next thing I'm going to be writing and working on here in probably the next couple of weeks is when I need to start on it, is a piece for soprano saxophone alone. It's going to be a series of miniatures based on the Pride Progress flag. Because I don't know if you know, but each one of those colors actually has a different like concept assigned to it. Like one is magic, one is healing, one is sexuality, one is life. So there's little descriptors to go along with those colors. And then the Pride Progress flag has inserted that triangle now with the trans and black and brown stripes as well. So I'm going to write a series of 11 miniatures based around that.
So,
And
Nathan, thank you so much for taking the time.
yes,
I'll,
thank you for asking.
yeah, of course, my pleasure, and thank you for writing the piece.